Hi, we're back with AmericanElgin.com, and today we're going to talk about what we consider to be the king of the 30 jewel Lord Elgins. And this is case reference number 1900. It is a 14 karat solid gold, just very large, very substantial, very impressive watch made by Star Watch Case Company out of Michigan. And this was, when new, this was one of the most expensive Lord Elgins you could buy. You could see sort of the kind of the brushed, almost coin edge type side of this case. The way it was made is very nice. This is a very, very impressive, very rare, and very expensive watch. When new, it cost more than Rolex Oyster and other types of very expensive Swiss watches, and it has a rather unique dial that's only used with this particular variation. Now, I want to talk for a minute not just about the watch, but also about the watch movement. So the 30 jewel movement, and here's an example of that. You can see up close. This is the 760 is the name of the movement. 760 is the categorization that Elgin used for this, because they had a bunch of different watch movements, so this was just number 760. And the 27 jewel is number 761. And that one's 27 jewels. This one says 760, that's the name of the movement or the number. 30 jewels, USA, made in USA, and then 6 adjustments. That means it's adjusted in 6 places for timekeeping related accuracy. Okay. Now, I want to talk for a minute about this because a lot of people don't know much about this movement, and this was the only full rotor automatic movement ever designed and made in the United States. And it was only made from around 1959 to 1963, when watchmaking in the US basically disappeared, and Elgin stopped making watches in the US and went through a whole bunch of issues as a company and basically ceased to exist in its old form. But I'll tell you a bit about this movement since people are not that familiar with it. So in addition to being the only American designed and made full rotor automatic, full rotor means this pendulum here swings in 360-degree rotation around the pivot point, and that winds the watch. And so you do not need to use the crown, which is this little knob here, to wind it manually. Instead, you just walk around or wear the watch and it winds itself. Now, let me tell you a bit about this movement. One of the leading, probably the leading watch movement database in the world is called the RANFT, RANFFT database, and that was created by Dr. Roland Ranft, who was a German scholar of watches and probably the most knowledgeable expert in the world on watch movements. And so what he said about this movement, and you can see the quote up on the screen, he said, "The Elgins belong to the most interesting automatic movements, for my opinion. They simply have the best relation between precision and durability on the one hand, and low production effort on the other." Low production effort means how many parts went into the watch and how complex the movement was. He says, moreover, the balanced assembly integrating free sprung, hairspring, easy adjustability, and shock resistance is still unique and outstandingly efficient design. So quite high praise from the world's leading expert on watch movements. Now, I'll read you 2 other quick quotes from Dr. Ranft so you can sort of understand why this movement, not only the watch itself is beautiful and it's noteworthy for being made in the US, but it's also an objectively impressive watch movement. And he says in another quote, he wrote, "The Elgin 760/761, and he's referring now, 760 is the 30 jewel version of this, and then 761 is the 27 jewel that went with the regular Elgin, not the Lord Elgin. He says, "The Elgin 760/761 collected the best design features available at the time," and then he goes on to list them. And then he goes on to say, and this is interesting for people who are enamored with high-end Swiss watches, he says that this movement uses a more sophisticated approach for regulation, meaning regulation of time accuracy, than the humble designs from Patek Philippe or Rolex. So this is, according to Dr. Ranft and according to others who've looked at this, it's a very impressive, technologically very impressive movement, and objectively interesting and noteworthy, apart from just the fact that it's made in the United States. Now we'll talk a bit more about, we'll slide the movement out of the way, and I'll just show you, just for size reference, since millimeters doesn't necessarily mean a lot to everybody. This is a US half-dollar coin from 1960, and you can see it's about 30.5 millimeters. And this is not a small coin. These are not seen in circulation anymore, but they were back in the 60s. You can see this watch is significantly larger than even a US half-dollar coin from that time period. Now, I will say, while this is a story of achievement, there is a little bit of a sad story to tell here also, and that is that, unfortunately, over the years, we've seen a number of these, and these are very rare watches. This comes up maybe once a year or maybe twice a year at most, or less often. But we have seen periodically, we've seen the movements themselves with this particular unique dial. We've seen these being sold separately, and unfortunately they came out of cases that were melted for some reason, because maybe the case was damaged or people didn't know what it was, and they just scrapped it basically for the gold value, which is pretty substantial. And it's very sad, because this is really an incredible achievement of American watchmaking, and very rare, and it's really been underappreciated for many years, and that's resulted in it being even more rare than it should be, because unfortunately some examples have been melted down, even though this is just a phenomenal example of, the final days of American watchmaking. And you can see on the bottom of the dial, it says American made. I mean, it's just such a testament to the people that made this in Elgin, Illinois, at the main plant, the famous main plant, which was at one time the world's biggest watchmaking factory in Elgin. And they made these with a great deal of pride, and they're extremely well made. Elgin was, apart from making great watch movements, it also, in the early 60s, was given the contract to develop the central timing mechanism for the NASA's Apollo moon program, which is very impressive, and other things that are talked about. We talk about on the AmericanElgin.com website. But it's phenomenal movement by Elgin, this 30 jewel movement, and fitted inside this case, it really is, I must say, one of the most impressive watches from the late days of American watchmaking, sort of the final days, but they went out on a high note, because really, at least this watch and many of the other 30 and 27 jewel self-winding Elgins are really a sight to behold, and they're just incredibly impressive. So if you'd like to see more information about this watch and others, we invite you to AmericanElgin.com. Thank you.